Thank you for joining me once again. I have another movie review for you. It's another 2024 release. This time I'm talking about Longlegs, a movie that I walked into with a lot of hope. I do like a good portion of this. In fact, I would say this is a movie I like quite a bit. But the problems start to come with the third act. I heard a lot of hype going into this. It's one of the scariest films of the year. Nicolas Cage is terrifying. The tension is just dreadful. And some of that's true, but overall, it's a good movie. It's also very frustrating for certain reasons, but I do like it a lot. It has a limited cast. Not a lot of people show up in this thing, but when they do, they leave an impact. The acting is great. I did like it quite a bit. So this is Longlegs, named after the titular killer. This is a detective crime thriller with a little bit of horror elements. It has a little bit of the supernatural showing up in the back half, but it's not super filled with it, if that makes any sense. This is rated R, an hour and 41, and 2024, came out this year. And it's directed by Oz Perkins. If you don't know him, he directed films like The Black Coat's Daughter, which I haven't seen, but I have heard a lot of acclaim for. And he's also the son of Anthony Perkins, who was, of course, in Psycho. So he has a little bit of the horror, pedigree going for him. And this is my first film from him that I've seen. He did a pretty good job, and it's not too bad. We do have a very limited cast. Essentially, this is it's like a detective thriller. So we're following this young woman, Agent Lee Harker, who's a part of the FBI. She's played by Micah Monroe, who, if you don't know, she's actually from It Follows. I think It Follows was from 2014. Great movie. And it's kind of similar to this. It has a lot more horror vibes. That's very much a horror film. This is more of a detective kind of film, in a good way. But yeah, she plays Lee Harker, and she's almost she's unusual. She speaks in these weird kind of sentences, and she seems to be on the spectrum, or she seems to have some kind of like mental illness or disability or something. At least that's how Micah plays her. That's what I got from her. She's a very troubled woman, and it doesn't help that she's assigned to this really disturbing case of this character named Longlegs, who has been killing numerous families and people for over 30 years, and the FBI is trying to figure out why. Like, how can we stop this guy? How can we investigate this further and not, prevent more victims from dying? And speaking of Longlegs, the best part of this film, and probably the reason why you're wanting to go see it, is because of Nicolas Cage. And he plays the titular Longlegs, this weird, like, rock star-esque serial killer. He's like a Satanist, but it's hard to explain without spoiling. I'll spoil a little bit of the film, in that he worships the devil. It kind of plays into the plot near the end, and he's a doll maker, and he makes these weird dolls that come to life, and that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't want to spoil anything else. Probably already said too much, but he plays Longlegs, and he is this really bizarre version of himself. Like, he's caked in makeup, and he's got these really weird ways of speaking. Like, he'll go from speaking a normal sentence, and then he'll just drone off into this weird tone. And he doesn't talk normally. He like rasps, and he like starts screaming and singing "Happy Birthday" at one point, and he starts yelling in his car. And there's moments where it's funny, like it's really weird, like it's creepy funny, like it's just ridiculous. But it's Nicolas Cage, so it's fine. Unfortunately, he doesn't show up in the film that much. He's really only in maybe 15 to maybe 20 minutes. I wasn't counting. That's just what I've heard from people. But yeah, from my experience, he wasn't in it that much. He does make it a great time. It's just you want more of him. So, that could be a con. We'll get to that later. We do have a couple other characters, maybe 3 more. It's a very small cast. There's not a lot of people in this for being such a like a big film, I guess. We have Alicia Witt as Ruth Harker, who is Lee's mom, and she has a small part. She definitely has more to play in the third act. She's bizarre, even more so than Longlegs. Like it makes sense with him, but you get this weird vibe from her. She's almost this very broken, even more broken than Lee is. She's not right in the head. She seems to be struggling with her mental health. It's really disturbing. In fact, I think probably she's the best like she probably has the best acting of everyone in this film. And especially near the end, it gets bonkers. But yeah, we do have another FBI agent. We have a few of them showing up in this, but Blair Underwood as Agent Carter. Not that Agent Carter, okay? Marvel fans, calm down, okay? It's not that one. Um, but yeah, excuse me. He is the lead FBI agent. He's the one who's assigned to the case with Lee, and they both have this great dynamic, kind of. This movie is very serious, but there is tiny moments of like humor. It's hard to explain. It's you have to go into it knowing nothing. That's how I went into this. There is nothing I knew except that Nick Cage was in it. That was the only thing that I knew. Um, and that's probably how you should watch it. Don't look it up. Don't look up the spoilers. Don't look up anything. And the promotion for this film was fantastic. We'll talk about that later. Yeah, Blair Underwood's great as the main FBI agent. He's the one who's assigning Lee to this. He's the head honcho of the agency, and he does a great job. He's pretty serious, but he does have some moments of comedy. He's a pretty good character. We're kind of following him and Harker, kind of a dual, performance we're following, and he does a great job. He's very no nonsense, but you get the sense that he's done this before, and he's wanting to catch this killer and put an end to this. Kind of a typical bravado performance, I guess. And lastly, we have Kiernan Shipka as Carrie Ann Camera. Interesting name. She's one of actually Longlegs' survivors. So she's one of the ones that actually survived his attack from the past. And she is mentally just drained. She is probably the most underrated performance because I think we only get one scene with her. It's in like a mental hospital. And she seems to have all of her brain cells depleted. Like she is just gone mentally because of this killer and what he did to her. And she just did a great job. She just comes off as insane, which is great for the film. It works. But it was disturbing to watch, I'll tell you that. And yeah, that's it. There's not really many other, actors. There's like one or two more, but it's really just on these five, but really just these four characters. And I have to get the pros out of the way. There's quite a bit. The way that it's shot is beautiful. It's very hauntingly gorgeous. The way that this film plays out, especially the first two acts, it is very slow, but in a good way. I think the best scene, I think my favorite, probably, I think I have two favorite scenes. The first one is the opening, where it's filmed like this A24, like, I don't think this is A24, but it just reminds me of it, where that studio will do lots of like fake outs and long camera shots and, close-ups and zoom-ins and lots of colors. This film does that really well with the opening, where the music is fantastically dreadful. It just builds and builds and builds and builds. And you have this little girl, which I'm not going to spoil, but there's a little girl at the beginning, and she's in the snow, and she's looking for her parents, and she sees this car, and she keeps looking from back to forth, and Longlegs is there, and we see him in the distance, and then you can see him kind of in the close-up, but we don't see his face until later. I think only they don't show Longlegs physically until like an hour into this, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, he's there, and I like the music because it's like, it'll cut to a shot, and it'll do like a little sting, it'll cut to another shot, another sting. The music's really good in that sense, and it's a really good opening, for sure, because the half of it's the music and half of it's the look of it. It's really creepy. And after that, we get to introduced to Lee Harker, and she's kind of this oddball kind of girl. She doesn't really have a lot of friends. She's on this case. She's kind of a loner, and we find out that she has a troubled relationship with her mother, and that kind of plays into it. She doesn't see her anymore, and she keeps calling her and wanting her to come visit. And it's really cool to see her life. It is filmed very well. It is just very slow. I think that works as a pro and a con. The pro side is that it's building the dread. It's very suspensefully done and shot. However, it also is kind of a con because it's not a fast movie compared to something like Smile 2, which I think is a little bit of it's a lot better, in my opinion, because it's a faster paced story. That's personally what I like about it. We'll get to that movie in another video, but what I mean is it's a very slow film, slow pace, slow burn. It's not a fast movie. So don't go into it thinking it's going to be this jump scare heavy, super fast, tight, 90 minutes. It's not that. It's not that. Which I was kind of expecting going in. I didn't even see a trailer. I didn't know what to think of this. I'm like, Longlegs, all right. I go into it, what, expecting, something cool from Cage. And we do get that. The acting is fantastic from everyone. That's another pro. The acting is amazing, especially from Micah Monroe, who I'd only seen from It Follows, which I also recommend. It's a fascinating case. It Follows is definitely better. It's not as frustrating. It's not as disappointing, and it is a little bit faster. So if you want something a little bit better, go for It Follows. But yeah, the way this is filmed is really cool. It's very crisp. It has this filmic feel. It feels like something that would come out in like the 90s or the 80s. And speaking of, this is set in the 90s, because we have Bill Clinton as the president in like a couple scenes like on the wall of the FBI office. Kind of cool. And the way this is like, it's a kind of a mystery detective type story, so you're kind of following along the clues with her, of Lee. And Lee's character, her character, Micah, plays her almost like a psychic. So she seems to have some kind of ability to foresee danger. Unfortunately, it's not really delved into that much. It's really not like, it's not as well used as I would have wanted, but just something to, think about. But yeah, it's pretty much a detective story halfway until Longlegs shows up. And then it gets really bizarre, where I don't know if it was just me, but when we were in the theater, it was dead quiet. I couldn't help laughing. There's a couple scenes. One scene is where he goes into this like pharmacy, and this girl is at the counter, and she's like, "Dad, this creepy guy's here again." And Longlegs shows up, and he starts like singing, and he starts laughing. It's I couldn't help but laugh. But the funnier scene is where he's in the car, and there's a couple scenes where he's in the car. But there's a scene where he's in the car and he just starts laughing and yelling, and I'm like, what? What is this? It's very funny. Like, I found it hilarious. I don't know. It's not supposed to be, but I just found it really funny. I don't know. That was probably just me, but I just found it really funny. I just couldn't help laughing because they're just so like it's Nicolas Cage. You expect him to do that, but it's just really funny. It just comes out of nowhere. And he starts singing. Anyway, I just found that really silly. That one little part in the car. But anyway, yeah, I like the style of this film. It's really well shot. It has this like old timey feel to it, which I really liked. And I like the costumes as well. It feels like an old fashioned type of thriller. Something like the Silence of the Lambs, or The Shining, or The Ring. It's kind of reminiscent of that. But my big problem with this, it's the ending. I don't want to get into it too much, because I don't want to spoil anything. But I will just say the third act just goes off the rails in the worst way possible. I thought it was leading to something more realistic. It doesn't. I'm not going to say anything too specific, but the ending just disappointed me and my dad, and everyone in the theater, I'm pretty sure, was not happy with the ending. Because this film, it goes from being really realistic in the human world, in the real world, and, very real, and then in the third act, it just goes completely off the wall, off the loony, just absurd. And it's not a good way in this case. I don't know. Like, it, it was a fine ending, but it wasn't the one we were expecting. And I'm pretty sure the rest of the people that saw this in the theater were also disappointed. I don't know. I do think the strongest part of this is Longlegs. He does have not a lot of screen time, but he has a lot of impact. He looks disturbing. There's a particular scene, I think my favorite scene is actually in a mental hospital where Longlegs and Lee Harker meet finally, face to face. And that scene is brilliantly acted, and it's really shocking what happens. And it was probably the highlight, honestly, of the whole thing. Unfortunately, the film doesn't really have another good moment like that. It's a good movie. I just think there were some things that could have been done better, especially the ending. It just. I can't say anything. It's just frustrating. Like, it was building up to something real, and it was more supernatural. In this case, that's one of the rare cases where it didn't work for me. Like, I feel like It Follows had a better ending. Like, I'm not going to compare, but I'm just going to say I think that ending was way better. But yeah, again, the acting is fantastic. The costuming is great. I just love the vibe. It's really surreal. That's the way I can describe this. It's a surrealistic type of dreadful experience in a good way. I really liked the vibe. The way this was shot. It is very professionally well made, for sure. And I'm actually inclined to watch the director's, some of his other work, maybe a couple of his other films now. Because of this, I liked it enough that would I rewatch it? Probably. There's enough going on to where I would rewatch it. And yeah, I did like it. One particular thing that I kind of liked and I kind of didn't like was the background. There was a ton of shots in this where Lee is doing her thing, like investigating or just reading or on the phone or sleeping or, going somewhere or whatever, following her throughout her day. And there's these shots in the background that are so. What's the word? They're so teasing, I guess that's the word. So there's no jump scares really, but you feel like there's going to be one, which there's not. It's kind of teasing you on the hook. You're like, hey, you think there's going to be a jump scare? Nope. It's just the way we're filming it. But I don't know. In that case, the shots are really cool. There's a lot of stuff in the background that you think are going to pop out. You think there's going to be a demon or a ghost or a person or something. Nothing happens. It's cool, but it's also baiting you. In that case, it's lame. So don't expect any jump scares. There's no ghost. There's nothing like that. So in that case, it is kind of lame. Again, I can't say much. Just the way it was filmed is great, but there's no payoff. There's no jump. There's no scare. There's no dread, I guess. I don't know how to explain that. There's people that are better suited to it than me. But yeah, I liked a lot of this. I liked 2 of the 3 acts. The first 2, it flows really well. It's just slow. Would I have liked it to be faster? Of course. Would I have liked there to be a little bit more realistic? Would I like the ending to be a little bit more real? Yes. Did I like all the acting? Absolutely. The acting carries this thing, for sure. There is a lot of great acting and actors. That's what keeps me engaged, even if the final act was not great. So, it is worth seeing. Maybe not in the theater. I know it's probably out of the theater by now, but go into it knowing that Cage is in it. Don't watch a trailer, and just go for it. Go into it knowing it's not going to be your usual horror. That's what I did like about Longlegs. It's not the usual dumb, cliche, stupid, jump scare heavy film. It's not like Blumhouse terrible. It it has its own identity, which I liked. It also pulls from different horror films, yeah, but it's its own thing. I think it's enough of its own film to stand out. Again, it's just not perfect. If the ending matched the first two thirds, that is probably I'd probably give it a higher score if the ending was more real, if it was more grounded in reality. Because it just went crazy, like for no reason at all. It wasn't a bad ending. It just wasn't satisfying. I don't know. It's hard to talk about this without spoiling everything. But it was done really well. The music, the acting, the ambiance, the atmosphere, the vibe, the way it was shot, all knocked out of the park. It's just again the ending is gonna break you. It's gonna either make you go yeah, or it's gonna be like oh, all right, I was the latter. But I've seen so many stuff this year. It's all kind of like melt. Like all these movies are just kind of like height. They're just kind of like being friendly with each other in my head. They're just like, hey, how are you? How are you? They're all just like in my mind. So I might get certain stuff wrong, but the plot was really good. Again, it just kind of falls apart in the end. But did I like it? Yeah. Um, it's in my top 10. It is. I liked enough of it to put it in there. And would I recommend it? Yeah. If you want something different, if you want something that'll keep you on edge, if you want to see Nicolas Cage do something different, sure. I would say it's a little bit similar to Renfield, which came out last year. He was also in that. I think that's probably a better performance from him. Probably a better movie. It's a little bit more silly, but yeah, I do like Longlegs. I think it's good enough for a watch. And even if you don't like it, that's fine. I think it did enough right. So yeah, I think I talked about everything without spoiling anything. I apologize if I spoiled too much with Longlegs himself. They're just you have to go into the plot a tiny bit just to give you some context. But I went into this nut like blind, like I didn't know anything, which I think that's what you should do with all horror films, right? You should go into knowing nothing. I kind of have a problem with doing research before films, but I'm getting better with that. But yeah, I did like Longlegs. Overall, I'd probably give it 8 out of 10. Again, the ending kind of knocked down the points, a couple of points off, but yeah, I liked it a lot. I like Micah Monroe. I'm interested to see more from her, for sure. And obviously, Cage is a fascinating actor. We don't know if he's a good actor, but he tends to take risks, and I admire that. So yeah, check out Longlegs. It's worth a watch. I think at least once you'll find something you like. I think in there, but that's about it. Let me know what you think about Longlegs. Do you like it? Do you not? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's one of Cage's best? Do you think Micah Monroe should do more horror? I think so. I think she would actually work well in a comedy. I think that'd be actually kind of interesting. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think of Longlegs. In the future, I might do a deep dive. But yeah, expect a review once a week. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it, or listening, since this is just mostly just just an image. But I liked it a lot, and I would recommend it. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for your support. I will see you for the next one. Take care and have a great one. Thanks again.